The brand exclusive pay-per-views were in full swing in 2003. WWE implemented them as a way to bring separation and identity to the Raw and SmackDown brands. That worked in some ways, however, also limited the potential of the WWE pay-per-views because there was usually a couple of matches that had no business being on the card. It did benefit the wrestler though because they got paid, but sometimes the quality wasn't there with the events and the buy rate would falter. There wasn't many brand exclusive pay-per-views that did well. We always talk about Vengeance 2003, 2005, No Way Out 2006, Unforgiven 2006, but never No Mercy 2004, and there's a reason for that. With that said, the brands had plenty of identity to the point where if a wrestler like Triple H showed up on SmackDown, he looked out of place. It felt like they were in different universes for the most part, with the big four pay-per-views being the only time they were together. I really like how WWE did the brand split back then. I'm not a big fan of the brand exclusive pay-per-views, but everything else was cool because Raw and SmackDown were very different in the way they did stories and matches. Unforgiven 2003 didn't bring the conclusion of stories, rather escalation, because many of these feuds were far from over. Kane and Shane McMahon was only just beginning, Triple H and Goldberg brought higher stakes here, Randy Orton wants to achieve legend status at the age of 23, Gail Kim and Molly Holly want to derail Lita's return before it happened. A lot more with this pay-per-view when compared to the last Raw exclusive pay-per-view, Bad Blood. With that said, Unforgiven 2003 was held in a giant center in Hershey, Pennsylvania on September 21st, 2003. 10,347 were in attendance and the buy rate was 360,000, which was an improvement over 2002's 300,000. The theme song for the event was Enemy by Seven Dust. I mostly think of a Here Comes the Pain trailer with this song, a lot of hype from it. They also used Cold Suffocate for the promo in the match between Test and Scott Steiner. With that said, let's get into it. The first match on the show was a tables match for the World Tag Team Championships. La Resistance defended the gold against the Dudley Boys. The reformation of the Dudleys had served them well because both men were a little lost without each other. Spike even joined them for the reunion, but up to this point had yet to result in championship gold. La Resistance had a quick push that mostly had to do with the fact that they were foreign heels, and it came during the Iraq War, so people were more patriotic. The build of this match saw Spike Dudley take a ridiculous bump over a table, which resulted in a concussion. Quickly, Devon goes on the attack. The challenger was very intense and aggressive, and he was forced back into the champion's corner for an opening, however that didn't work for long. Rob Conway struggled to figure out this onslaught. These two were delivering clubbing blows and flat out aggressive. Great clothesline from Bubba Ray Dudley. He involved the other two for a splash and the duo hit a flapjack. At this point there was no answer to the Dudley Boys. The one-man advantage was what La Resistance responded with. They did that limited heel offense that involved strikes and chokes. Their offense didn't last as long as the challengers, and a backdrop was enough for the tag to Devon. He came in with all the momentum, and that tag team experience the Dudleys had served them well. What's up? And it was time for the tables. The numbers though got to them, and it didn't help their chances. They threw Devon through a table and only Bubba was left. That didn't mean Devon left the match. He was still around, but he was eliminated. But Bubba responded with a suplex on Grenier to even things out. They almost sent Bubba through one, but Devon made that safe. Rob Conway took the roughest table spot in the entire match, and they dropped Dupree with the French flag. And even though he fought it out, it wasn't enough, and the Dudley Boys dropped him through a table with the 3D. Pretty strong opener. I actually liked it more than I thought. The reason why is because of the environment. If it was a regular tag team match, it wouldn't have been too good. I don't think it would have even been good. The table stipulation, on the other hand, brought many great spots, and the crowd was really into it. La Resistance were pretty green, but you didn't see much of that here because of the match style. The Dudleys were much better champions for Raw at the time, and it was the easy choice. They were much more experienced, the crowd actually liked them. It's much better served for them to be the champions rather than La Resistance, so there's that. The next match in the show was between Test and Scott Steiner, a feud that centered around Stacy Keibler. This was a strange story, with Stacy being someone that brought Test a lot of change and success. She transformed him, the fans saw him differently, but he mostly did things in his own interest, and that often hurt her. Scott Steiner was basically taking advantage trying to cuff her, and even though Test and Steiner were tag team partners, it was never gonna work because Steiner didn't really like Test didn't really like him, and there was a woman involved. At this point, the stipulation was that Steiner would become Test's property if he won. Steiner gets her managerial services if he wins. Steiner was basically done the moment he lost to Triple H. They signed him too late, not to mention he didn't have a single standout match at the time. Unfortunate that it didn't work, but even if he performed, the moment he told WWE to drug test Triple H of all people, Triple H, who had a lot of power in this time period, if they were gonna test him, shows you that the relationship was never gonna have a fruitful aspect to it. Test quickly went on the attack, taking advantage of a distraction. Test was like this abusive boyfriend, although he wasn't exactly her boyfriend at the time. She was just basically his manager by force. He was doing everything to get an advantage, even used Stacy as a shield at one point. Stacy was becoming more of a problem for Steiner. He wasn't fully focused on the match. Pump handle slam in the ring, but it wasn't enough. Hey, if this was 2000, that would have been the end. Both men felt an ego boost of sorts with her around, and it felt like they always needed to prove themselves. Steiner caught Test off the top for a belly-to-belly. Test used the ref as a shield but failed to hit the pump handle. Steiner was teetering off a lift, but he managed to hit it. Test was using all kinds of shortcuts for the win, and Stacy at one point had enough of this, and Steiner took advantage. Off the turnbuckle, Steiner ran into the pump handle slam, and Test was ready for the big boot. Stacy with the distraction, she bumped into Steiner, and Test took advantage with a slow-ass boot, which Big Papa Pump with all his experience should have seen. But hey, this isn't 2000 WCW where he's 91 overall. This is 2003 WWE where he's 76 overall. He exposed the turnbuckle, but Test was thinking differently, and these turn of events led to the big boot and the victory. He thanked her for the victory, which made Stacy completely upset, and it also meant Scott Steiner would be his property. Hey, it's unfortunate to say, but this was better than both the Triple H and Steiner matches. Test mostly carried here in the sense of character. He was such a great heel here and basically used every rule in the book to be the smarmy villain who always found a way out. The match wasn't exactly inspiring, however, Test was the best part of it. He was the best part, and it wasn't because of the action, it was because of his character. Other than that, Steiner was done at this point. No one really cared about the storyline much. It had been dragging on and on and on, and it would take a very strange turn over the next couple of weeks. The next match was between Randy Orton and Shawn Michaels. The Legend Killer meets the Icon. Randy Orton's portrayal of grandeur and legend status at the age of 23 brought a lot of confidence and more often than not, arrogance. Orton believed he had it all figured out despite his young age, and Michaels wanted to teach him some lessons. The story was wonderful, and that's in spite of it being one we've seen often in the past. The difference maker is that Randy Orton seemed destined to become an icon of the industry, a man backed by Triple H and Ric Flair. There was too much invested in Randy Orton for him to fail. That was the story here. He was trying to take advantage of Shawn Michaels' experience and legend status to establish himself. Alright, with that said, let's get into it. Shawn Michaels went for the wrestling early on, and that clearly worked because Orton's experience didn't allow for him to stay composed. The Legend Killer was losing composure, but Flair made sure to keep that confidence instilled in him. HBK knew all of Orton's moves early on, and ironically it took him an HBK-style sequence to get back in and hit a dropkick. What he had in his arsenal was aggression, but even all that inexperience overwhelmed his mind, and it was back to square one. Extra points for skinning the cat. Baseball slide under the ropes from HBK, and he connected with a beautiful crossbody. He was teaching him a lesson in doing it in Orton's style as well. Strong German suplex from Michaels for a near fall. HBK was prone to errors as well, but he knew how to backtrack and get back on offense. That was the difference maker. Orton had all the talent in the world, but his inexperience constantly clouded his judgment. His opening finally came after HBK bumped into the corner. Ric Flair even made matters worse with a throw to the post, inflicting additional damage into the shoulder. Randy Orton smelled blood, and being taught from the icons of the game, used HBK's shoulder to his advantage. This is where the Legend Killer finally shined. He stretched all that momentum he had into ensuring Shawn Michaels would be at a disadvantage in the match. A roll-up attempt finally opened way for HBK, who was bringing a fight. As always, Orton eventually messed up, and Shawn Michaels made good on that chance. Big forearm and the kip-up. Shawn Michaels' comeback sequence. Flair got a right hand, and at this point, he was more into fighting than wrestling. The Nature Boy came in once again, but HBK didn't falter and hit a crossbody for a near fall. It was very close. Orton reversed an Irish whip into the corner to get some space. Both men were down, and it was basically time for Act 3. Orton was looking for something from the top, but Michaels with a single boot knocked him down. Sweet Chin Music gets countered into an RKO. Flair thought he was down. 1, 2, no. He was losing it while Orton was trying to think of a way to score the win. So he went up top again, and anytime he hit this on pay-per-view, it never worked. I don't know why. Every single time I was watching a WWE pay-per-view match from 2003 involving Randy Orton, he would never hit this. It was no different here. Michaels did it better, though he hurt himself doing it. Orton barely got his shoulder up, and from out of nowhere, Shawn Michaels kipped up and was ready to tune the bend. He dropped him with the Sweet Chin Music. 1, 2, 3. At least that's what it looked like initially. Flair handed him some brass knucks, and the referee started the match. Flair took the risk, but this allowed for Randy Orton to drop him with the brass knuckles. 1, 2, 3. Good match. I like it a lot more than you guys. I obviously don't think it was amazing, but there's a certain chip on HBK's shoulder during pay-per-view matches. He always goes the extra mile and provides strong matches, makes his opponents look good, and in turn himself. I always loved this match because Randy Orton, with all the potential in the world, managed to show up here. And this man was only 23 at the time. He wrestled in such a composed and experienced way, as if he's been wrestling for years. Yeah, the story was that he was inexperienced, but in real life, this man didn't have many weaknesses at the time. You have to respect it. I like the fact that Orton thought he knew all the roads and where they lead. HBK wanting to smack him and use him as an example of another name that tried to use him and his name that brings a lot of honor and prestige to the wrestling industry at his expense as a stepping stone. They had better matches later on, but here it was pretty good. In the back, Chris Jericho went off on Stone Cold's GM Authority. The next match is a tag team match. Gail Kim and Molly Holly faced Trish Stratus and the returning Lita. This is a golden age of sorts of the women's division. There was still a high level of sex appeal. However, a lot of matches that revolved around the women's title were way more important than previously. Lita was almost like the ace in the hole for the division, and I'm not talking about Sonny Siaki. They were already doing good without her, but the additional star power of the former women's champion was always going to be positive. The heels quickly went on the attack, but Lita was almost unstoppable early on. Clothesline in the corner overwhelms Kim and Holly. Molly didn't want none, so Gail Kim had to deal with her. 2 arm drags in a backdrop before a suplex and kip up. Trish comes in, seated senton and some brutal shots. The King was fawning. Scratch that, going beyond that over the woman. Gail Kim just wanted to get out of there, but it wasn't working, just like her entire WWE run. Rough chops from Trish, but just as she's getting heated, Molly pulls her up and they double teamed her. This opened the way for Molly to enter the match. She had the aggression that Kim lacked and tagged her back in to do her dirty work. Kim resumed Molly's work, but Trish's athleticism brought her an opening that Molly was starting to shut down, taking out Lita off the apron. This worked in the heels' favor, allowing for an extended reign of dominance. Blind tag sequence only benefited Gail Kim and Molly Holly, who used illegal methods to keep their advantage. Trish found a way out, but just as she goes to the tag, Gail Kim drops her with a clothesline. She messed up badly with that one, allowing for Lita to enter the match. The momentum had swung in the good woman's favor, and there was not much for the heels to do. Lita with the Lita bomb, but Molly took advantage. She failed to do much though, and Lita dropped her with a twist of fate and the Lita Assault. 1, 2, 3. It's funny to see the women actually have extended matches in this era of WWE. Solid action. I just think that a lot of people didn't really appreciate this division as much as they should have, because only a year later it was back to being a snooze fest. Here, he had a lot of top women here, and again, as good as I think it was here, WWE did not fulfill the women's division's potential. I think it could have been a little more than it was, because right after WrestleMania 20, SummerSlam 2004, there was nothing of note here except the name Trish Stratus and Lita. That's it. Here it was much different. 2003 was like wonderful for the women's division. It was great. The next match was a last man standing match. Shane McMahon faced Kane. Kane had been largely tamed throughout the years. He had become more humanized and less about the hellfire and brimstone. That was until he got unmasked. Kane became the biggest threat in the WWE, a national security threat that belongs in solitary confinement for 23.5 hours a day. This guy belongs in the movie never mind. This guy belongs in the game Manhunt. The chaotic nature of Kane began to affect Shane's family, and he had enough. It was the first time that McMahon appeared in WWE in about 4 months, in almost 2 years for storyline purposes. He quickly attacked Kane with a steel chair during his entrance, forcing him to adapt. These chair shots were rough and barely did much to Kane. He was doing everything he could with that steel chair to ensure he stays down, but this was 2003 Kane. The chair didn't work, so he started bumping his head into the steps. The striking game was never going to work, even if Kane had wounds in his face. He had some on his back here. I don't know why I wrote that. His attempt from the barricade only served as an opening for Kane to take control and inflict true damage. He dropped with the steel steps, and back in the ring, Kane took his time. He dropped him with a chokeslam, but even that wasn't enough. Shane had far too much fighting spirit. At one point, Kane accidentally knocked down the referee. He thought it was too easy to just lay him out, but said something about Shane seeing his mom. So this was enough to motivate him. He brought in the steps, but as he tried the tombstone, Shane hit the bulldog to find an opening. He had to match that level of brutality, all while the referee, a 24 overall referee, was taking a nap. Wake up! Shane went coast to coast in an effort to keep this monster down, and it seemed like it worked, but the ref was down. So much time that would have brought Shane the victory. Kane dropped the steps on him, and the ref finally started counting. They went to the outside, where McMahon was barely standing and using all his energy and will to stay in the match. There was a burst of energy, but it was far in between. Kane threw him into the Unforgiven side, and he thought he found the meta, constantly throwing him into the sign. That ended up being patched, of course, and they made their way to the Spanish announce table. Well. Kane tipped over the table, but there was nothing under. So Shane used this to his advantage and brought out a sign, using it to repeatedly blast him before dropping him with the camera crane. He beat the count by 1 number, and Shane opted to choke him out. Nothing was working for Kane here because Shane always found an answer. This guy was hitting low blows using a monitor, and it seemed like Kane was down and out. But even he knew this man was like a dog being fed meat. He'll always come back. So he went to the top of the stage and jumped off, landing on nobody. This gave Kane the victory. I don't like the fact that Shane McMahon is being portrayed as being on Kane's level, especially at a time where Kane needed the greatest super push, seeing as he went crazy again, but I appreciate the fact that it was insane stuff and basically forced Shane to become a madman to match Kane's level of violence and intensity. This match was good. It was booked to the best of its ability. It reached its potential in being what it was. It didn't really get boring, which kinda caught me off guard. I haven't watched this match in about 10 years, so it's nice to see that it delivered. High level of intensity, violence, and drama. Shane always tries to show up with his matches and does the absolute most to ensure it stands out in your mind. You can call him a spot merchant, but that man used to put on a show. And again, Kane in the year of 2003 shouldn't be booked like that, but when visiting this feud, I think of other things. It's not I just think of the positives, yeah. We're just positive here. Yeah, he shouldn't have Shane McMahon of all people be a huge threat, but even then, I find enjoyment in this feud because to me, in a nutshell, to put it simply, it felt like an action movie. There was a segment they had at a restaurant, which is one of the most distinctive segments I've ever seen WWE do, and adds a lot to this feud for me. I like it a lot. I think if it happened later on in Kane's career, I think more people would respect it, but since it happened at a time where he needed literally the World Heavyweight Championship, obviously people would see it differently. So there's that. Good match though. I liked it. Okay. Chris Jericho thought that this match was a prime example of the problems Stone Cold caused. Austin told him that they could fight, but Y2J didn't budge, saying he's gonna make it difficult for him. First, he has to watch his Intercontinental Championship match. Okay. The next match is a triple threat match for the Intercontinental Championship. Christian defended the gold against Chris Jericho and Rob Van Dam. Christian had come out of his tag team run fiending for a push that brought major changes to his look and character. Christian was becoming a bit more serious, although that would continue to materialize in the next couple of months. Chris Jericho was just around and RVD was in the same situation. The Y2J and Christian alliance continued throughout this match, with both men trying to get rid of Van Dam and start their singles match. RVD's unique offense matched to overpower those two and hit a brutal suplex off the top rope before connecting with a moonsault. It was an issue for the heels. Monkey Flip gives RVD a 2 count and he evaded a clothesline before hitting a single leg dropkick. Jericho comes in from the top to take advantage and he slowed down the pace for a moment with strikes, but as always, RVD found a way. He made something out of nothing with the standing moonsault. Springboard missile kick, but Christian came back in. He threw him into the steps, but Jericho wanted to be the one who benefited most from the situation. The game plan was for both men to take control and then do their thing, but their egos got in the way. Both men were on point here, but it was never going to end well. Awkward moment here, and it's probably supposed to be a clothesline combo. Van Dam got out of it and started doing his own thing until running into the Enzuigiri. If this was 2004 Jericho, that would have been enough. It's such a random change he had. It suddenly became his finisher. Failed backdrop or flapjack allows for RVD to hit a double DDT. Van Dam used the Irish whip to his advantage, rolling over the top rope onto Christian. The crowd didn't seem much into it, and Jericho with a rake to the eyes and the springboard dropkick. Y2J started to wear down RVD and get the fans to rally on to support Mr. Monday Night. Van Dam had a moment where he rolled up Jericho, but he was still in control. RVD couldn't get out of the struggle and found himself in the walls of Jericho. Christian finally returned, and this was when both men had enough of the partnership and went all in for the gold. These two had the most intense battle in the entire match. Reverse elbow from the top, but Christian responded with an inverted DDT. His old move, or his old finisher. RVD returned, but Jericho pushing him off the ropes to knock down Christian. Superplex, and it was time for the final act. RVD returned to the match and picked up the pace. He connected with a crossbody, messed up on the transition, leading to the Bulldog and a failed Lionsaw attempt. Spin kick from Van Dam. He's building momentum when Christian came in from the top and landed right on Jericho. Dropped Toho to the wrong area, and RVD thought it was time. 5-star frog splash. He took too long on the cover and that cost him. Christian went over the top rope and Van Dam was setting up something in the corner. Christian comes in and they hit the electric chair, and this was by far the best spot of the match and the one that actually got the crowd more interested in the match. Christian's mouth was bleeding. He walked into the kick. He ran back in there with the title, got catapulted into Jericho, who tried bringing in a chair. Van Dam's 5-star was thwarted and blocked by the belt, which allowed for Christian to go for the pin. 1, 2, 3. This match was so disappointing early on. I actually couldn't believe that these three were able to cook something, seeing as they were three of the most exciting in-ring performers on Raw. How did that first half be so disappointing? I don't know. It was so uninspired and lacked their greatest qualities. The fans witnessed a crazy match between Shane and Kane, but it felt as if they gave up for most of the match. The match got way better once Jericho hit the superplex, and from there, with no knowledge of the previous parts of the match, you'd think it was a match of the night candidate. But as always, I prefer a positive conclusion than a terrible one. Fighting your way out of a dull match instead of ruining all the goodwill in your match and having people constantly talk about how you messed up, that didn't happen. RVD was the real star of this match. He was far and away the most exciting part of it, whereas the heels were forced to be something that neutered their true capabilities. I thought they solved the problem by the end, but in a nutshell, it feels like they didn't take advantage of the triple threat concept. Booker T added to make it a fatal 4-way would have been great, but he was out with a back injury. In the back, Triple H was telling a story of someone that's delusional, someone whose fairy tale was destroyed. In this business was said, greatest wrestler alive was said, and the champion said that he didn't believe in the hype of Bill Goldberg. So tonight, he's gonna end his career. That's how it went. The next match is a tag team match for the Raw announcing team positions. The Coach and Al Snow faced Jim Ross and Jerry the King Lawler. Ever since becoming an S-tier bootlicker for Eric Bischoff, the Coach felt a lot of resentment towards the fact that Raw was commentated by a king and a cowboy. The promo is the most hilarious part of this match. They made this seem like some grand battle. Unfortunately, this match had no place on Velocity, Heat, Raw, and most certainly a damn pay-per-view that cost over $30. Funny enough, this match had no commentary. The King quickly tried to steal the victory, but was unsuccessful. They traded pin attempts, and you could hear a lot of words from both teams. JR was pretty worried about Lawler's position. He thought that they needed to be calm and composed. Al Snow took advantage of the King's ring rust, and he was in control. And it was clear that they relied on these two to put on a match. It's ABC stuff. Obviously, the Coach isn't going to be putting on a performance. The King bounced back with a pile driver and almost scored the victory. The Coach's ego got in the way, and Al Snow was worried. Some of the most generic heel stuff here, but then he messed up opening way for the King to make his comeback. Body slam, and it was time for the fist. Al Snow had to break the fall. JR finally got the tag. He low-blowed Al Snow, had a sequence you'd expect of the Coach. He took a beating. All of a sudden, Chris Jericho came with a dropkick. 1, 2, 3. I just want to finish the damn review. I don't want to deal with this match. That was rough. I still don't get why this was on a pay-per-view and why the King and JR lost. Chris Jericho said that this was a way to get back at Stone Cold, but about the match, it was always going to have a ceiling seeing as it was the King and Al Snow. They were wrestling regular training center style, and it was never gonna be good. Not to mention that the coach and Al Snow were gonna commentate Raw. What is this Sunday Night Heat? Is Maven gonna wrestle Stevie Richards in the main event for them to be commentating the show? It really made Raw seem lesser by the fact that the coach and Al Snow were gonna commentate it. It made it feel like more of Sunday Night Heat, you know? They quickly realized that. I don't even know why they did this story in the first place, but yeah, this match wasn't good. And the main event, Triple H defends the World Heavyweight Championship against Bill Goldberg. If Goldberg loses, he has to retire. There was also the rule that if Triple H gets disqualified, he loses the title. At this point in time, Goldberg had a strange relationship with WWE. He wasn't exactly a favorite of theirs and it was starting to become strained, but even they couldn't deny that Goldberg was a major star, and paying him $1 million a year with no house shows was certainly an expensive decision. So they basically had to make good on him. You have to try and get your money's worth from him. His WWE run was far away from how he was booked in WCW. The last thing Goldberg needed was those 20 to 25 minute matches. Like, yeah, that's a bad mark on him. Yeah, I get it. I know he isn't exactly the best wrestler and is greener than a tree leaf, but if you bring in the man, you should book him to his strengths. And again, I get that Goldberg couldn't wrestle his way out of a bag of straws, but if WCW turned him into a mega draw, shouldn't WWE be capable of making him a mega draw? I feel like they were shocked that he wasn't a traditional main eventer. What the hell? This guy looks like a deer in the headlights. I wish it went differently. He had a lot of momentum in that chamber match. The business is still like that where they drag things to pop a buy rate, or in this case, to make the story seem more fulfilling when it sometimes isn't. It is what it is though, so yeah. The King and JR were clearly distraught and they treated it like it was actually their last match. Triple H came out first, oddly, because he's the champion, you know, I expected him to go out last. The game was wearing biker shorts again, which had to do with his groin. This was a rough point in his career because on top of the underwhelming year he had as champion, he was injured and bloated, so his performances took a hit. Rough collar and elbow tap early on. Goldberg showed that power and strength which clearly got into the game's head. It was overwhelming. The challenger had a lot of pressure on him to deliver and he was making good. They traded blows with Goldberg winning this battle and connecting with a high back body drop. That strength and intensity was doing wonders for Goldberg. He had more moves in his arsenal than I remember, which is weird to say. And as he went for the spear, Triple H hit the high knee. The champion wasn't doing too much work because of his injuries. Elbow on the apron gives him a near fall. The pace wasn't that fast already, but the game made sure to slow it down and isolate the challenger with strikes to the knee. Figure 4 to apply pressure, and Triple H was bending the rules using the ropes behind the ref's back. He started to take more risks, but Goldberg escaped. Big power slam for a near fall. The Irish whipped him right to the outside, and his aggression was no match for the champion's intelligence. He low blowed him behind the ref's back, and as he went for the pedigree, Goldberg backdropped him to the outside where he brought out the sledgehammer. Triple H dropped him like that, and his victory was in sight. He didn't sell as much as you'd think because a couple of seconds later he hit the spear. Goldberg then hit the jackhammer 1, 2, 3. New champion. It had to happen. Bill Goldberg's run in WWE always had to end with at least a single title reign. I just always see it that way because at the end of the day, this guy was a massive star. One of the biggest stars the wrestling industry had seen during this era. He had to win the World Heavyweight Championship. If Sting came to the WWE, same thing. I think he had to end his run with at least one world title. As for this match, it wasn't that good, honestly. It was never going to be that good. I do think they should have followed the WCW style here and had Goldberg have a much shorter match and just basically destroy Triple H. It's Triple H at the end of the day, so he's not going to really be hurt by it. He ended up winning the title later on anyways. So here they could have done a match that's like 5 minutes. I think if he beat Triple H like that and went crazy, I think that would have been wonderful. It would have been great. But instead, it was one of those long matches. And again, it wasn't terrible, but there was a lot of plotting moments through it, and it was not the best match on the show. It was clearly not the best match on the show, so yeah. Alright, that's Unforgiven 2003. This event was decent, you know. It was an easy watch for me, I'm not gonna lie to you guys. The Triple Threat match was a weird one. I think it was the most disappointing match for me, because heading into this event, and I watched this event before, I always thought that match was better than it was. They obviously worked hard near the end, turned things around, but it's pretty disappointing match, and definitely the most disappointing one for me on the show. Worst match, clearly the Coach and Al Snow against Jim Ross and Jerry the King Lawler. That match had no business being on the show. There's a reason why I spoke so fast. I just wanted to get through it because I didn't care much, and I know a bunch of you probably don't care much about it as well. And the main event, it was always going to have its problems, especially the style they wrestled. Triple H wasn't in form, not to mention he was injured. Goldberg wasn't exactly a guy that knows the word wrestling, so it ended up being whatever. Alright, my match of the night, this might come as a shocker to you guys. Heading into it was going to be Shawn Michaels and Randy Orton. Watching the event again, I'm going to go with Kane and Shane McMahon. I feel like that match shocked me a little bit more than it did. I knew the match was decent, kind of good, whatever, but it was much better than I remember it being, whereas I kind of built up a myth of Randy Orton and Shawn Michaels' match being like this amazing battle, and it was good. I actually like it more than a bunch of you guys, definitely, but it's not match of the night for me. That goes to the last man standing match. I thought they surprised me a little bit, so yeah. Alright, what you guys think of Unforgiven 2003? Please comment down below, and that's the first video. Make sure you hit the coast to coast and perhaps the spear on the subscribe button. Peace. I'm out.